welcome to this class. In this class, we're going to talk about clauses and sentence formation. A clause is a group of words or a cluster of words with a subject and a verb. A clause is a group of words or a cluster of words with a verb and a subject. So the two things that must be present for us to say that a group of words or a cluster of words is a clause are a subject and a verb. A group of words with a subject and a verb. This is what we call a clause. So we identify two things that may be present for us to call a group of words a clause. They are subjects and a verb. They must be present for us to identify whether a group of words is a clause or not. For instance, if you have when I come, it has a subject and it has a verb, therefore it is a clause. I am here, it has a subject and it has a verb, therefore it is a clause. Now looking at these two examples, we can notice one thing. This one, the first example, when I come, it is not a complete sentence. When somebody tells you when I come, you'll be expecting the person to say more things. It's not a complete sentence. Like, when I come, I'll give you my Bible. When I come, I'll help you. When I come, I will tell you something. So it needs something to make it a complete sentence. But the second one, I am here, you can put your full stop. It makes a complete sentence. So this means that we have two types of clauses. We have a clause that does not make a complete sentence and a clause that makes a complete sentence. The clause that does not make a complete sentence, we call it a dependent clause. The types: 1. Dependent clause, and 2. We have independent clause. A dependent clause is a clause that still needs more things to make it a complete sentence. It cannot stand on its own and make a complete sense, or it cannot stand on its own and form a complete sentence. While an independent clause is a clause that can stand on its own and form a complete sentence or make a complete sense. Like the second example, I am here. You can put your full stop, it forms a complete sentence. Somebody will understand what you're saying, but in when I come, if you don't put more things to make it clearer, the person will not understand what you're saying. So it is not a complete sentence, it doesn't make much sense. So it is a dependent clause. A dependent clause is also called a subordinate clause, while the independent clause is called the main clause. So these are the two types of clauses that we have. Now sentence. In sentence formation, we use clauses to form a sentence. A single clause can form a sentence if it is an independent clause. Remember that an independent clause is the one that can stand on its own and makes a complete sense. That means it can form a sentence standing on its own. Then an independent clause can join with a dependent clause to form a sentence, while two independent clauses can join together to form a sentence. Two independent clauses can form a sentence when they join together, but two dependent clauses cannot form a sentence. So in sentence formation, we have sentence formation, using clauses. One, we have either a single independent clause, two independent and dependent clause, plus dependent clause, and three, two independent clauses, So these are the ways that we can use clauses to form a sentence. A single independent clause can act as a sentence. An independent clause and a dependent clause can join together to form a sentence, and two independent clauses can join together to form a sentence. Let's look at them in details. Single independent clauses. Examples: 1. I am here. They have come. I am here. So it actually means that most sentences are actually clauses. Most single sentences are actually clauses, although not all sentences are clauses. There are some clauses that are not sentences. If it is a dependent clause, it is not a sentence, cannot be a sentence when it stands on its own. There are some sentences that are not clauses. So note it. I'm here is a complete sentence and is a clause because it has a subject and it has a verb. They have come is a clause because it contains a subject and contains a verb. So it is a clause, but it has a complete meaning, which means that it is a complete sentence. It forms a sentence. This place in a single independent clause forming a sentence, you don't have much work to do. But when we have an independent clause and a dependent clause coming together to form a sentence, there is a small job you need to do. Independent plus dependent clause. Now we have two rules here. Rule 1, if the dependent clause is coming before the independent clause, we have to separate the two clauses with a comma. Example: if he comes, he will beat you. If he comes, he will beat you. If he comes, he will beat you. Now we have two clauses here. If he comes is a clause because it has a subject and it has a verb, but it does not make a complete sentence. It needs more things. to make it a complete sentence. So it is a dependent clause. Now because it is a dependent clause and it's coming first in this sentence, after the dependent clause we put a comma. See the comma here. Then he will beat you is a complete sentence if you leave it alone. So it is an independent clause. So in this case, where you have a dependent clause and independent clause, and the dependent clause is coming before the dependent clause, we have to separate the two clauses with a comma. Rule 2 there, if the independent clause is coming before the dependent clause, there will be no need for a comma. That means that if we are coming first with this, he will beat you if he comes. There will be no need for a comma. Rule 2. If the independent clause is coming before the dependent clause, there will be no need example. He will beat you if he comes. So here, the independent clause is coming before the dependent clause. He will beat you. If we leave it alone, it can stand on its own, so it is an independent clause, and it is coming first in this sentence before the dependent clause, which is if he comes. So there will be no need for us to separate the two clauses with a comma. So we leave it as a single sentence without a comma. He will beat you if he comes. But in the other part where the dependent clause is coming before the independent clause, we have to separate it with a comma. So note the two rules. When independent clause and dependent clause are coming together to form a sentence, if the dependent clause is coming before the independent clause, if the dependent clause is coming before the independent clause, we put a comma to separate two of them. But if the independent clause is coming before the dependent clause, there will be no need for a comma. Then we have a case where two independent clauses are coming together to form a sentence. Two independent clauses. Two independent clauses are coming together to form a sentence. Now, the rule is this: when two independent clauses are coming together to form a sentence, the first rule is that we have to separate the two independent clauses with a semicolon. If it is a dependent clause and an independent clause, we separate with a comma. But if it is two independent clauses that are coming together to form a sentence, we separate with a semicolon. That's the rule 1, when the two are coming together to form a sentence. Rule 1. Separate with a semicolon, if the two if the two independent clauses must be in a single sentence. Example: I like this class. I like this class. I like this class. It is very interesting. It is very interesting. I like this class. It is very interesting. So here we have to separate the two independent clauses. I like this class. I like this class. This can stand on its own as I like this class is a complete sentence. It is very interesting is also a complete sentence. So there are two independent clauses and they are coming together to form a single sentence. So we have to separate two of them with a semicolon and not a comma. If it is a semicolon, if it is it's an independent clause and a dependent clause, and the dependent clause is coming before the independent clause, we use a comma to separate them. But if it is two independent clauses that are coming together to form a sentence, we use a semicolon to separate them. That is rule 1 when two independent clauses are coming together to form a sentence. Then the next thing we can do, the rule 2, is that we can separate the two independent clauses into two separate sentences, in which case we have to use a full stop to separate them. Rule 2. Rule 2. Separate the two independent clauses with a period. Separate the two independent clauses with a period. If they must not necessarily be in a single sentence. Or separate the two independent clauses with a period into two separate sentences. Into two separate sentences. Separate sentences. So we have what we're going to have is I like this class. I like this class. Full stop. It is very interesting. It is very interesting. I like this class. It is very interesting. So these are the three ways we can form a sentence using the clauses. It is either we use a single independent clause to form a sentence, or we use a dependent clause and an independent clause to form a sentence, in which case if the dependent clause If the dependent clause is coming first in the sentence, we have to separate with a comma. But if the independent clause is coming first in the sentence, there will be no need for us to separate with a comma. And the third case is where we have two independent clauses coming together to form a sentence. In this case, the first thing is that we have to use a semicolon to separate the two independent clauses if two of them must be in a sentence. But if two of them don't necessarily have to be in a sentence, which is always preferred, then we can separate them into separate sentences with a full stop.